Have you ever believed you'd finally figured life out, only to have everything shattered in a single unexpected moment? At 60, I thought I was back on solid ground, balancing my new online vintage shop, celebrating my daughter's pregnancy, and even finding joy in hip-hop dance classes. But in one late-night phone call, my world turned upside down. If you've experienced a sudden twist that changed your entire course, I invite you to share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay connected as we delve deeper into what it truly means to start over at any age. Now let's step into the first chapter of this journey, where a single event disrupts everything I thought was finally going right. I never dreamed I'd be scrounging for hope at age 60, yet here I was, crouched in a hospital corridor while monitors beeped and fluorescent lights hummed overhead. My daughter Kelsey, pregnant with her first child, had been hit by a drunk driver only hours before. Leaning against a pale green wall, I felt as though everything I'd built since losing my job a few years ago, every small success in my nascent reselling business, suddenly teetered on the brink of collapse. The doctors told me she'd sustained several fractures, and there was serious concern about the baby. I tried to keep calm as they discussed potential complications. My thoughts darted back to my tiny home office, racks of vintage dresses, half-packed orders, the eBay listings waiting for my late-night attention. Until that frantic phone call, I believed I'd finally borne the fruit of starting over. A renewed sense of purpose, enough income to sustain my household, and a bright plan for the future. But life showed how quickly it could spin everything out of control. Day after day in the hospital, I clutched my phone, toggling between messages about shipping orders and updates on Kelsey's tests. When she regained consciousness and mustered a weak, "I'm sorry to worry you," I all but sobbed, relieved to hear her voice. The doctors demanded caution. She might go into premature labor if any new complications arose. I was no stranger to stress, but this was a different kind of helplessness. Oddly enough, part of what gave me the courage to keep going came from a place I never expected, my newfound senior hip-hop class. I had joined that class on a whim a few months prior, curious to see if a woman my age could still learn something so energetic. The group was mostly women over 50, each with their own aches, replaced knees, and proud survival stories. We made a pact to celebrate small victories, like perfecting a new step, and to laugh off mistakes. Their support soon extended beyond the studio. When the accident happened, they texted me encouraging notes, wanting updates on Kelsey. Their solidarity reminded me I wasn't alone in facing another life curveball. While Kelsey lay in bed, monitors strapped around her belly, I snuck home for short bursts at my desk, fulfilling customer orders and shooting quick emails. My reselling community, which I'd built online, also poured in with words of comfort. Some even volunteered to handle shipping if it would help. At night, I tried dialing our insurance company, facing a maze of rules on prenatal coverage and hospital bills. In those moments, everything about my new life, my business, my dance class, my sense of identity, felt fragile. Still, I clung to the belief that there had to be a way forward. Eventually, Kelsey stabilized enough that the doctors toned down their alarms about an emergency C-section. We breathed more freely, although they warned it could still happen if her vitals dropped again. The day Kelsey's eyes brightened with the first true smile since the accident, she whispered, "Mom, you can't quit everything you love just because I'm lying here." I realized how important it was, not just for me, but for both of us, that I hold on to some semblance of normalcy. Even at 60, I could shuffle my schedule, juggle medical updates, and still find pockets of time to keep my life afloat. One afternoon, fueled by unexpected optimism, I visited the dance studio. Just stepping inside made my knees tremble, both from stress and excitement. My instructor waved me in, saying they'd been rehearsing a simplified routine so I wouldn't feel behind. For a moment, the music washed over me, and every worry shrank. I might have struggled with the moves, my thighs stiff from hospital chairs and tension, but it didn't matter. Each step felt like I was making a statement. We're still standing. We're still trying. A few days later, Kelsey was discharged, though on strict bed rest. At home, we navigated the practicalities of getting her comfortable, adjusting pillows, sorting prescriptions. Meanwhile, I balanced shipping orders, checking on new inventory, and paying our mounting bills. It was exhausting. Yet every time my daughter saw me reading dance notes or catching up on new vintage arrivals, she'd nod approvingly. "We'll get through this," she said. Over the next weeks, Kelsey's bruises faded. Her leg healed little by little. The baby stayed steady, defying the early fears of premature labor. One evening, she pointed to a baby crib we'd been too scared to assemble before. "Let's finish it," she insisted, a mischievous glint in her eyes. We spent an hour sorting screws and wooden panels, as if building a tangible reminder that we still had a future to look forward to. Outside, the daylight vanished, replaced by the hush of evening. Yet I felt a growing spark in my chest, the quiet thrill of possibility. Throughout this upheaval, I never fully quit my passions, reselling and that humble hip-hop class, even when I juggled them with hospital trips and insurance calls. And it turned out each facet of my life propped me up in a different way. The business gave me financial lending and purpose. Dancing provided a breather, reminding me that no matter how stressful the day, I could reconnect with a rhythm that said, "You are still alive." On the day Kelsey returned for a final checkup before entering her last trimester, the doctor smiled at the gleaming ultrasound. "The baby looks strong," she said, and we practically melted with relief. Though I didn't know what challenges lay ahead, I knew one thing. Starting over at 60 had taught me that adversity could strike at any moment, but it hadn't stripped away my ability to adapt. Whether it was pivoting careers, picking up a new hobby that defied stereotypes, or caring for my struggling daughter, the core lesson remained. I'd chosen to keep moving forward, one reselling order, one dance step, one hopeful heartbeat at a time. Over the next few weeks, Kelsey's resolve grew as steadily as her belly. The baby continued to thrive despite the scare, and she managed gentle exercises at home, carefully guided by her physical therapist. With each passing day, I felt a little more confident that we'd weather this storm. Juggling reselling orders and hospital follow-ups was never easy, but I found small moments to cling to the dance routines, as though each beat reminded me that life's music was still playing, waiting for my next step. Late one evening, after a busy day of packing shipments, I sat beside Kelsey on the couch. A soft light illuminated the half-assembled baby items scattered around us. We talked about possible names, about how she wanted the nursery painted, and how I planned to reorganize my workspace once things settled. There was still anxiety in the air, hospitals, insurance, and finances pressed on my mind, but her smile hinted at something stronger. We'd come so close to tragedy, yet here we were, mapping out a future that suddenly felt real again. On the night before her final trimester appointment, I recorded a quick message to my senior hip-hop class, thanking them for cheering me on from afar. Their replies poured in before I'd even shut off my phone, dancing videos, clapping emojis, short voice notes telling me to keep at it. For a moment, I pictured the me from a year ago, unsure how to hold on to hope after losing my job, thinking I was too old for anything new. Now I was on the cusp of welcoming a grandchild and upholding a promise to myself to never give in to fear, no matter what curveballs life threw. I still had so much to learn, so much growing left to do. When we walked into the clinic the next morning, the doctor's grin radiated across the room as she confirmed continued progress, both for Kelsey's healing fractures and the baby's steady heartbeat. Relief flooded me. I remembered that first frantic day in the hospital, phone calls echoing in sterile hallways, uncertain if I could bear one more heartbreak. Yet, here we were, proof that a person could bend without fully breaking, even at 60. That night, as I tidied up my online listings and Kelsey finally slept soundly, I marveled at how life had once again tested my endurance and rewarded me with the fiercest kind of hope. We weren't merely surviving, we had found a way to keep dancing forward, together. A few days later, I stood at my front door with an armful of bubble mailers ready for the post office, and paused at the sound of laughter inside the house. Kelsey was propped against several cushions, chatting animatedly with a friend who'd come to help rearrange the makeshift nursery. Across her lap lay a baby name book, pages dog-eared, with options she was debating. It was a scene I couldn't have imagined weeks ago when she was pale and trembling in a hospital bed. That evening, I returned from my errand to find Kelsey experimenting with a short dance routine she'd seen online, something gentle and low impact. She glanced up, embarrassed, but I just grinned. "Is that the routine from my class's last video?" I asked, eyebrows raised in mock surprise. She shrugged, then tapped the remote to replay the track. I shifted aside a laundry basket and joined her, moving carefully in tandem with the gentle beat. Even with the weight of hospital debt and the unpredictability of the coming months, we found ourselves laughing through the simple steps, savoring the moment. Later, after she settled in for the night, I went online to finalize a few orders. My reselling account showed an encouraging number of messages, kind folks from far and wide, asking for updates, giving me tips about local programs that might help with medical costs, or simply writing words of support. It struck me how much my life had expanded, even in crisis. From an uncertain woman searching for a new start at 60, I was now part of a spirited community, juggling a family emergency and a budding online business, and discovering reserves of strength I'd never guessed I possessed. Before turning in, I revisited the latest practice video from my senior hip-hop friends. The sound of bass and cheerful voices filled my headphones, and I felt my shoulders relax. In another life, I might have let fear or exhaustion hamper my hopes, but I'd come too far to give up now. Looking at a framed photo of me and Kelsey from happier times, I whispered, "We've got this." Because despite everything, the lost jobs, the late-night hospital runs, the swirl of insurance worries, my heart remained open to the idea that starting over was never a one-time deal. It was an ongoing dance, and as long as the music played, I'd keep moving. Over the next couple of weeks, Kelsey grew ever closer to her due date. Though there were still nerves and the occasional worry, medical bills, leftover aches in her leg, the unpredictable journey of motherhood, our household felt infused with cautious excitement. In the early mornings, I'd tiptoe around our makeshift nursery, tucking away tiny socks and pastel blankets. Sometimes, just as the sun peeked over the horizon, I'd pull up a quick dance routine video from my senior hip-hop group and let the beats wash over me. Even if I only swayed in place for a minute or two, it was enough to remind me how far we'd come since that awful night in the hospital. Eventually, the day arrived. Kelsey's contractions started mild, then gained momentum until we piled into the car, this time of our own accord, not in a swirl of ambulance lights. She grasped my hand throughout the labor, her face pale and determined. In those tense hours, I flashed back to all the times I'd questioned my ability to cope. Losing my job at 50-something, picking up a brand new hobby at 60, trying to nurture a small business in between. Each change had terrified me, but I'd faced it anyway. Hearing the first cries of my granddaughter, strong, insistent, and utterly miraculous, suddenly galvanized every rough moment, transforming it into a testament of survival and faith. When the nurses let me hold the baby, I felt both tears and laughter bubbling up. She was smaller than I'd imagined, perfectly snug in a pink and white swaddling cloth. Across the room, Kelsey offered a weary smile, the lines of pain on her brow softening into relief. I realized that none of us would ever be quite the same. The accident, the hospital stretches, and the relentless insurance woes had carved new depths into our lives, and yet it never destroyed our sense of hope. We had adapted and readapted, stumbled and stood again, living proof that starting over is less about erasing the past than it is about weaving it into a braver future. In the days that followed, I updated my reselling customers who cheered us on from afar, celebrating a newborn's arrival as though they were part of the family. A few of my dance classmates dropped by with casseroles and baby gifts. Kelsey slowly regained her strength, and whenever the baby drifted to sleep, we'd chat about fresh ideas for my shop or simple hip-hop steps I could teach her once she felt strong enough. There were still mountains to tackle, medical payments, late-night feedings, perhaps a few more tears, but somehow none of that loomed as large as it once did. We'd found our footing in the chaos, guided by an unshakable belief that no obstacle, not age, not a near tragedy, not the long climb of financial recovery, could silence us for good. When I finally returned to the dance studio, the music felt sweeter than ever. Each step carried echoes of the hospital corridors and that tiny hospital ID tag I kept in my pocket for luck. But along with the sadness was gratitude for the second chance I'd carved out for myself. Clapping with a room full of silver steppers, I remembered the promise I'd made to keep starting over no matter how many times life demanded it. This new little family member only strengthened that vow, her bright eyes and gentle breaths, a daily reminder of what it means to hope boldly. If my journey resonates with you, I invite you to share your own story below. Let's learn from each other's triumphs and stumbles. And if you haven't yet, please consider liking this post, subscribing, or passing it on to a friend who could use a dash of encouragement. Because at any age and in any circumstance, the music of life is still playing, and we owe it to ourselves to keep dancing.